Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh specifically declared that he would cause the frogs to invade and overrun all Egypt's borders. The Hebrew word for frog is tisf-ardea, meaning to leap or a leaper, to come or to emerge from one place to another. The word frog is also defined as a person of low status, regarded by many as disgusting, repulsive, or unwelcomed. Today in the United States, there's a group of people called immigrants and refugees that are emerging from other countries and crossing all of our borders in unprecedented numbers. The publication Migration News reports that illegal immigrants are leaping across Texas borders at a rate of 10,000 per day. 10,000 per day. Who do you think is paying for them? Are you paying for them out of your pockets, or are you paying for them with your job? As a highly developed nation and a major economic center, the United States has become a magnet for illegal immigrants. Some citizens are complaining about how the government has lost control of our borders and how they are losing their job to immigrants. The governors of California, Florida, and Arizona describe the influx of illegal immigrants as an invasion or a natural disaster. They have sued the federal government for reimbursements of costs that they incurred as a result of providing services for illegal immigrants. The Egyptian government's stubbornness brought on economic failure, poverty, unemployment, and homelessness. Today, in the United States, we are suffering the same fate with no immediate help from the government in sight. Let's read Exodus chapter 9, verse 3. Behold, the hand of the Lord Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh is upon thy cattle which is in the field, upon the horses, upon the asses, upon the camels, upon the oxen, and upon the sheep. There shall be a very grievous murrain. Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh caused Egypt's cattle population to decline. The Hebrew word for cattle is mikneh, which represents the wealth of a country. Egypt's cattle was a symbolic representation of its prosperity and riches. Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh caused Egypt's economy to fail. Let's read in Genesis chapter 47, verse 15, and see that Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh even caused the money to fail in Egypt. And when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, Give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. Today in the United States, we are experiencing the identical signs of economic failure. Millions of us have been laid off our jobs. Our children's futures are not promising. We are losing our homes, businesses, capital, and properties. Banks are failing at a phenomenal rate, and no answers are coming out of Washington. The Egyptian government suffered economic destruction because of their unwillingness to let the children of God, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, go. Today, in the United States, we are suffering divine economic destruction because of the unwillingness of the government to let Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, Beit Nun Sofi, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, go. 4,000 years ago, a series of natural disasters, also known as plagues, fell upon Egypt and its people. The natural disasters were the mighty works of God, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, in his judgment of Egypt. Today, the United States is being judged by Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh with the same plagues. because of the government's refusal to release his son, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, Beit Nun Sophie, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh. Let's read Exodus chapter 3, verses 19 and 20. And I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not by a mighty hand. And I will stretch out my hand and smite Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in the midst thereof. And after that, he will let you go. Last week, we talked about the plague of cattle in ancient Egypt. The cattle represented Egypt's wealth, and because of the plague, the Egyptians suffered a great loss of wealth. Today in the United States, this plague is symbolic of a weak economy and a loss of properties, riches, and prosperity. Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh sent Moses to the Egyptian government over and over again to demand the release of his people. The demands that Moses made were not of his own, but were those of the one who sent him in his stead, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh. Thus, when the Egyptian government rejected Moses, in truth, they rejected God, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh. Egypt would soon know that Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh was the power behind the plagues. Let's read about the plague of the waters turning to blood in Exodus chapter 7, verse 17. Thus said the Lord Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, in this thou shalt know that I am the Lord Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh. Behold, I, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh caused the waters of Egypt to turn to blood. The word waters is symbolic of people. The word blood is synonymous to violence, assault, and murder. Our waters turning to blood can be seen in a Justice Department report that found in a typical year, 2.5 million of our nation's females 12 years and older were raped, robbed, assaulted, or killed. The Egyptian government would not listen to the demands of Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh through Moses to let his people go. So Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh continued to plague them until they did. Let's read in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 59 and 61, and see what the United States government could avoid by releasing the Son of God, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, Beit Nun Sophie, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh. Then the Lord Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. Also, every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. What Deuteronomy chapter 28 is telling us is that we have a choice to continue being plagued or to put a stop to them by releasing the Son of God, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh, Beit Nun Sophie, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh. In his mercy, Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh had Moses give notice of the plagues to the ancient Egyptian government. But in their failure to listen, the Egyptians doomed themselves to ever-increasing harm. Today, we will focus on the plague of hail. Let's read Exodus chapter 9, verses 22 and 25. And the Lord Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh said unto Moses, Stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast, and upon every herb of the field, throughout the land of Egypt. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail smote every herb of the field, and broke every tree of the field. Hail is the same as a severe thunderstorm, a tornado, or a hurricane. The United States has been bombarded with one storm after the other. There have been a series of tropical depressions which have destroyed homes, businesses, crops, costing billions of dollars. The divine judgment of Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh is upon America because those sitting in high places have ignored his warnings. This type of suffering from Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh shall continue until the release of Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh, Beit Nun Sophit Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh. The most pestering plague that preyed upon Egypt was the swarms of flies. Let's read Exodus chapter 8, verses 20 and 21. And the Lord Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water. And say unto him, Thus saith the Lord Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh, Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. The swarms of flies that Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh plagued Egypt with affected all the households. The Hebrew word for fly is a robe, and is interpreted as a mosquito. Some mosquitoes are parasites that depend on the lifeblood of others for survival. In Roget's International Thesaurus, a parasite is characterized as a person who has been laid off a job or is unemployed. The days of lifetime employment in the United States are gone. Let's face it, we are being plagued by unemployment. According to an article in the Washington Post, since the present administration took office, some 250,000 federal workers lost their jobs, and there will be more layoffs. Regardless of what they're calling it now, re-engineering, restructuring, downsizing, the result is the same. Layoffs and terminations are at an all-time high. No organization is safe from massive layoffs, and job security no longer exists. The American Management Association found in 1994, 2/3 of the workers laid off from their jobs were college-educated employees. A college degree, a corner office, an officer title, years of seniority. Nothing can vaccinate the worker from the grip of this plague that's sweeping across our nation. This government has imprisoned the one sent by Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh with the answer to all these plagues. That one is Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh, Beit Nun Sophit, Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh. Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh predicted that Pharaoh would refuse to let his people go, dooming the Egyptians with one crisis after the other. Let's read about the crisis of lice in Exodus chapter 8, verse 16. And the Lord Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh said unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod, and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. When the lice infested Egypt, the Egyptians saw that it was the power of God Yud-He-Wav-He. The Hebrew word for lice is Cain. Lice sting, and they cause irritations. Lice are characterized as mean and contemptible persons. Lice is also defined as mites, which point to juvenile delinquents. Today, Congress has found that juveniles account for almost half the arrests for serious crimes, and these youths are becoming more violent. Recent trends show an upsurge in arrests for murder, assault, and possessions of weapons. Congress also found that juvenile delinquency constitutes a growing threat to our national welfare, requiring immediate action by the federal government. This infestation of lice is frustrating and perplexing to America, and it is on the increase. This government has imprisoned the one sent by Yud-He-Wav-He to deliver us from all these crises. And that one is Yud-He-Wav-He, Beit Nun Sofit Yud-He-Wav-He. The final plague that Egypt suffered was the death of the firstborn. Let's read Exodus chapter 11, verses 5 and 6. And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it any more. When we hear the phrase shall die, we think about physical death. But die also means to come to nothing, to be weakened, or to fail, such as a failing economy. Today, the United States is holding the Son of God, Yud-He-Wav-He, Beit Nun Sofit Yud-He-Wav-He, in bondage and refused to let him go. And like ancient Egypt, the United States is faced with the death of its firstborn. The Hebrew term for firstborn is Bekor. Who represents our firstborn today? The Bible describes the firstborn as the chiefs or leaders of a nation. Let's read Psalms chapter 105, verse 36. He smote also all the firstborn in their land, the chief of all their strength. Our firstborn are the business leaders, our employers. They are the owners of banks and industries. Here in the United States, we are witnessing the death of our firstborn. When you see major airlines such as Eastern and Pan Am shut down, know that it's the death of the firstborn. When you see big banks merging or closing, it's the death of the firstborn. When you see blue chip companies such as IBM and GM laying off tens of thousands of workers, know that it's the death of the firstborn. Let's read Exodus chapter 4, verse 23. And I say unto thee, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. Like ancient Egypt, Yud-He-Wav-He is bringing America down because of the few arrogant and stubborn men in high places who refuse to release his son, Yud-He-Wav-He, Beit Nun Sofit Yud-He-Wav-He. The plagues we're facing here in the United States today are divine. The God that judged Egypt 4,000 years ago for holding his people captive is the same God that's judging America today. Judging America for holding captive his son, Yud-He-Wav-He, Beit Nun Sofit Yud-He-Wav-He. The 10 plagues then are the same